Okay, we're good to go.
All right, I'm calling to order the City of Emeryville successor agency to the Emeryville Redevelopment Agency meeting. It is 7:15 p.m. And please bear with me while I read these introductory remarks. I'd like to state for the record that this meeting is being conducted by teleconference pursuant to the Brown Act waivers provided for under the governor's executive order in response to the COVID-19 state of emergency. During the public health emergency, City Hall is closed to the public. The agenda states that the public may view the meeting that is being live streamed online and on ETV Channel 27 and provide comment by submitting an online comment form, which will then be read into the record by staff. The comment form can be accessed by going to our main City of Emeryville website at emeryville.org and clicking on Council Agendas and Videos. Once there, you will see a link entitled Submit an Online Speaker Card. The public also has the option of participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom and may provide public comment during the meeting using the Raise Your Hand feature visible on your screen, or if you're calling in, press *9 to raise your hand. The Zoom call-in information was provided on the posted agenda as well as e-notification and on social media. So with that, I will turn to the clerk and ask to please call the roll.
Councilmember Bowders.
Here.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Pats.
Here.
Vice Mayor Donahue.
Here.
And Mayor Martinez.
And I am here, and now I will call for a motion for approval of the final agenda.
So moved.
Second.
So I have a motion from Member Medina, a second from Vice Mayor Donahue. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bowders.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Pats.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue.
Aye.
And Mayor Martinez.
Aye. That brings us to ex parte communications. Does anyone have anything to report for this meeting? Okay, seeing none, that takes us to public comment. Now is the time for public comment portion of this meeting. Anyone who wishes to make comments related to the items not on the agenda or on the consent agenda should have submitted your online speaker card by now. 3 minutes will be allowed for the city clerk to read your comments into the record. If you're participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature visible on your screen, or if you're calling in, please press *9. At this time, I'll ask the clerk whether any comments have been received via the online comment card or whether anyone has raised their hand to make audio comments.
There are no online comment cards and I see no raised hands.
Nor do I. So seeing no additional electronic submittals, the public comment portion of this meeting is now closed, and there being no audio comment, public comment is now closed, which takes us to the consent calendar. Does anyone have anything they wish to pull or discuss? No, seeing none, I will take a motion and a second.
So moved. Second.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Member Pats, a second from Vice Mayor Donahue. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bowders.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Pats.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue.
Aye.
And Mayor Martinez.
Aye. And as we have no action items, I am calling this meeting adjourned at 7:19 p.m. And I'll give staff a moment to catch up and let me know when you're ready for the next meeting.
Ready?
Okay. So it is still 7:19 p.m. and I'm calling to order the regular City Council meeting of the City of Emeryville. It is still February 2nd, and I just read the script within the last 4 minutes. Sherry, do I need to do it again?
No, I think we're good. Thank you.
Thanks.
And the roll as well.
And we are all still here. So I'm looking for a motion on the final agenda.
I move approval of the final agenda. Second.
I have a motion from Vice Mayor Donahue and a second from Member Pats. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bowders.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Pats? I'm going to assume that's an aye.
Aye.
And Vice Mayor Donahue?
Aye.
And Mayor Martinez?
Aye. And there are no special orders of the day, but I'm going to take a personal point of privilege and just acknowledge that it's Black History Month. And I want to take the time to say that Black Lives Matter and that Emeryville stands in solidarity with those who wish to acknowledge this country's deep history of systemic racism and who want to change hearts, minds, and institutions that continue to oppress Black people. So I apologize for not agendizing that. But we'll move on to number 5, announcement of commission and committee vacancies.
Yes, thank you.
Some point of privilege and just acknowledge that it's Black.
Sorry about that. You're having a deja vu all over again. So we do have an open recruitment. We kept it open after we were unsuccessful in filling our unexpected vacancies. We currently have vacancies on the Planning Commission. There are 2 on Budget Advisory Committee and then 2 on Commission on Aging. The applications deadline is Monday, March 15th. So please visit our webpage to put in your application. And the council appointments, we're going to turn right around in one day and hopefully make these appointments on March 16th. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. That moves us to number 6, council member special announcements and reports on meetings attended. And I will take another point of privilege to announce the very sad passing of our former city manager, Carolyn Lair. Carolyn leaves behind her 2 adult sons and her husband, Tony. And those of us in the city who spent any time with Carolyn will feel a great loss today. And we will miss her very much and extend our heartfelt condolences to her friends and family. Does anyone, Member Bowders?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam City Manager, if I may just through the mayor a question, will the city be sending something to the funeral, or should I say the reception that's being had, the celebration of life event for Ms. Lair? Do we have a plan to do that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And related or unrelated, does anyone else have any announcements or reports at this time from council? No, thank you.
I'm sorry, I was late. Sorry. I just have an announcement. I'm going to put more information out to share through the city, but Caltrans is doing a series of surveys right now. They're actually really important for Emeryville. One of them, which is perhaps not as directly related to us, is they're actually surveying about the concept of something called bicycle highways. And they're looking at creating a bicycle highway that circles the Bay Area. And they're looking for interest in what kind of concepts and features would go into that. And so I will send that information to staff because I think the BPAC and Councilmember Medina might be interested in, before that survey ends, giving the committee a chance to weigh in on that piece. And the other item is that Caltrans is also doing a survey of dangerous intersections. And they're looking, I think they have grant money. They don't make it clear why they're doing this, but they're looking at intersections that fall within a 500-foot distance of Caltrans right-of-ways, and that includes a lot of Emeryville. It happens to include the Powell Christie intersection, and they're asking for community members and residents to go into this interactive map and label the intersections that they find dangerous for either pedestrians or bicyclists. And again, I'll be putting information out, but I just want to flag for people today that while they're gathering that data, this is an opportunity for us to call attention to a couple intersections in our city where we'd like to see improvements or investments, I think, because Caltrans is looking for those opportunities, or at least they say they are.
Thank you, Member Bowders. This might actually be a good time to mention that Pete Buttigieg was confirmed today, and that Vision Zero is something that we'll be looking forward to addressing on a national level. So I'm looking forward to having the federal government's involvement on these issues. So That will take us to the city manager's report. Madam City Manager, do you have a report this evening?
Nothing tonight, Madam Mayor, other than just to acknowledge the passing of our colleague Carolyn. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. This evening, does anyone have any ex parte communications to report for items on this agenda? Member Bowders.
I've had a conversation with members of the team at Bird Scooters regarding item 12 point, I believe it's 3.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk.
Anybody else? And I'll just report that we all got an email from Celeste Burrows, who is a member of the community who just wanted to promote Mr. John Suter for PAPCO, which is 12.1, I believe. And that takes us to the public comment portion of this meeting. Now is the time for public comment. Anyone who wishes to make comments related to items not on the agenda or on the consent agenda should have submitted your online speaker card by now. 3 minutes will be allowed for the city clerk to read your comments into the record. If you are participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature visible on your screen, or if you're calling in, press *9 to raise your hand and be acknowledged. At this time, I will ask the city clerk whether any comments have been received via the online comment card or whether anyone has raised their hand to make audio comments.
There are no online speaker cards and no raised hands.
Thank you. Seeing no additional electronic submittals, the public comment portion of this meeting is now closed. Which brings us to the consent calendar. Is there anything, colleagues, that you would wish to pull or discuss? If not, I will happily entertain a motion.
On the consent?
Second the motion.
Okay, I have a motion from Member Medina, a second from Member Bowders. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bowders?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Pats?
Aye, yes.
Vice Mayor Donahue?
Aye.
And Mayor Martinez.
Aye. We have no public hearings this evening, so we're moving on to our action items. And I'm going to take them in the order of appointments to the ACTC Paratransit Advisory first, and then the EDAC second. And Sherry and Ty, I see in the title of 12.1, it mentions Planning Commission, but we're not.
Oh, that's part of the title for the ACTC. It's an and planning commission. It's all part of that one long title.
Sorry, I just noticed that now and it confused me a bit. So
it confused me too.
Very good. So I'd like to handle the applicants for PAPCO first. And I'd like to ask if either applicants are on the line and give them an opportunity for 2 minutes each to introduce themselves to the council.
Madam Mayor, I see John Suter on the line, but I have 2 people that I can't. Oh, and then
I see Diane Zuniga.
Yeah. Okay. There's 2 people there with phone numbers or iPhones, but yes, I see our 2 applicants. So I will go ahead and allow John Suter to speak. And you said 2 minutes?
Yes, please. And don't start it until he starts speaking, because I was just saying, welcome, John.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to meet with you, as it were. I am looking forward to supplying as good a representation as Yvonne Brenz gave the city. She asked if I would be interested in, as it were, relieving her of her position. She was moving and didn't want to leave town until somebody replaced her in this position. Unfortunately, it didn't work quite that way, and so I think she's gone. But I'm here ready to take her position. I think I have established for members of the COA my, let's say, style of being a member of a committee. and that is I take ownership in my responsibilities, and it sometimes can get a little, let's say, dramatic. I think Kim Burrows can identify with what I refer to as our homework this month. I've gotten quite involved in the age-friendly action plan, and had to be slowed down a little bit and told everything is fine, just relax. So I get very, very much into what I try or what I believe is my responsibility. And so if anything, I may have to be slowed down, but as with my corporate experience, I like to make things happen, and that may not be all that compatible with the normal process of a, let's say, of a political environment, but I am learning. I am trying to modify and become more, let's say, compatible with everybody. And I think I'm doing okay. I haven't been put in my place too often.
That's your time.
Perfect timing, Mr. Suter. Diane Zuniga, are you available to make 2 minutes of comment, please?
Go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go. Go ahead, Diane. Diane, can you hear me? Well, I guess she's having audio trouble.
Yeah, it looks like she's able to raise and lower her hand.
Right.
But you're unmuted on our end, Diane. So if you can find the mute button on your Zoom, and that on my computer, that's on the bottom left-hand corner. And if you're clicked onto the Zoom window, if you hold down your space bar, you should be able to unmute yourself as well. You know, I don't want her to miss out on an opportunity to speak before us. So I'm going to ask staff if it would be okay to take this slightly out of order and consider EDAC and then come back to Ms. Zuniga once she has resolved her audio issues. John?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to ask staff, do we have a way of reaching out to her? This has happened to a number of public participants at other Zoom board meetings I've been at, where they either don't, Diane, you may not recognize that you need to turn your microphone up. It's not the volume or the mute. It might just be your microphone. Or if you have headphones plugged into your computer and you're thinking you're listening to us live, your headphones are the source of your microphone. But in any event, if she can't do this, Diane, if you go to the website and the agenda, you can call in to the meeting and you could call back and raise your hand again so that we could hear you. Because I would really like the opportunity as the ACTC rep to hear from both of these people and ask questions later. So I appreciate you, Madam Mayor, taking them out of order because I would like to hear from Diane.
And I will also ask our Deputy City Clerk, Lorraine, who deals with our committees, to see if she can connect with Ms. Zuniga off to the side and help her too. So hopefully you heard me say that, Lorraine. I see you sitting there.
All right. Well, with that said, let's move our consideration to, technically it's all the same item, so I think this is fine, to 12.1.2, which is a consideration of the City of Emeryville appointing someone to our Economic Development Advisory Committee. So we've got two applicants before us this evening, Jean-Philippe Garut and Kristen Walraven, and I will ask the clerk to see if either of these folks are available to introduce themselves.
Yes, Jean-Philippe Garut is on and allowed to speak, and I'm not seeing our other applicant, Kirsten Walraven, but perhaps she has called in on one of these two phones, so we can check after Mr. Goret speaks.
Okay, and I'll just say, Kirsten, if you are listening via phone, please hit *9 to raise your hand so we can acknowledge you after Jean-Philippe. But at this time, let's please go ahead and give Jean-Philippe the opportunity to introduce himself for 2 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jean-Philippe. Thank you so much for letting me the opportunity to introduce myself. I submitted my application to be part of the Business Economic Development Advisory Committee because actually I just moved to Emeryville almost 2 years ago. I got transferred for work and I'm the general manager and country operation manager for Decathlon, the sporting goods store located in Emeryville, in the Target Best Buy area. And for me, since I moved here, obviously I'm also living myself like in Emeryville. And it has been like quite surprising in a really good way how like the city was helping me as a new inhabitant of Emeryville, I would say, and also as a general manager for the store in all the projects that we've been like handling. So for me, I've been working for the company for more than 9 years, and I've been like opening stores in France, and I had like never such like such a feeling about like the economic development of a company and within a city. And for me, both are completely linked. So that's why for me, it's really, really important like to be part of the community, to be part of the city, because we are a business, but we are part of the city, we are part of the communities. And that's why I applied for this position. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jean-Philippe. Can I ask you for help with pronunciation for your last name so I get it right when I meet you in person?
My last name is Goru.
Goru.
Yeah.
Merci. And now we'll be looking for Ms. Walraven, if she is available. I don't see her named amongst our attendees, but Kirsten, if you are listening, I hope you will please press *9 to raise your hand. And I see Lorraine has joined us if she wants. I don't know.
Yes, I was going to ask her if she'd heard back from Ms. Walraven about whether she was planning to attend or not. She may be off trying to help Ms. Zuniga.
You want to unmute Lorraine and we can see?
Hi, perfect timing actually. Diane just called me back and she is logged in with her phone. It's a 909 number.
Okay.
All right, so we're back to PAPCO. And staff, when you're ready, you can unmute that 909 number and we'll have Diane introduce herself.
Diane,
Hello?
can you hear us? There she is. Yay.
Can you hear me? Okay. Sorry about that. I was desperately trying to figure this out.
All right.
Thanks for hanging in.
Yeah, I mean, we worked it out. So just to introduce myself a little bit, ironically, I do work in the technology field in public relations. So I've been doing that for about over 10 years, living in the Bay Area. Most recently, I moved to Emeryville about 2 years ago, but I've been kind of your neighbor for a while. I went to school at UC Berkeley, and I've kind of continued to stay in the area. Emeryville kind of has a special place in my heart because it's a small city, similar to where I grew up, which was desert and just a lot of mountains, like very rural area. And I headed over here to go to UC Berkeley. I graduated in a field of communications and I've kind of been in technology since. So just in terms of kind of qualifications, a lot of what I do happens to be in kind of finding the middle ground and being able to message to the public. So, you know, for the last 10 years, I've worked with companies that are at a global scale, created relationships with the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, CNBC. These are folks I speak to kind of every day. So really understanding the landscape of what's going on at the local level and kind of at the global level is very important to me. I know you had a question around just a little bit of my experience or really understanding the transportation side of things. I imagine you guys have all kind of read my application. So there's a lot of just kind of personal feelings in terms of public transportation. My mom was, disabled, and she was, very much engaged and able to remain active because of the public transportation system. And when I saw the opening, it kind of spoke to me. I've always wanted to get involved in something at the city level. So I just figured, why not? My family actually comes from a political background back in Nicaragua. So it's always just been a dream of mine to be able to help out a little bit. And with that, any questions?
So I will, this is perfect time to turn it back to my colleagues for clarifying questions from the applicants. Let's address the applicants for PAPCO first, please. So if there are questions for Ms. Zuniga or Mr. Suter, and I just want to make sure that the clerk can promote Mr. Suter so he may answer any questions. Let's take them one at a time. As we heard Mr. Suter first, questions for John Suter from my colleagues, Member Bowders.
I think Member Medina can go ahead. Go ahead.
You pointed right at her on my screen.
We got to screenshot these. Yeah, I'm going to ask the same question to both applicants to keep it very fair. Specifically, if appointed, what would be your goals or what specific action items would you like to accomplish to make public transportation more accessible for those who have physical disabilities?
So John, if you would answer first, please.
Right. I have to admit that I don't have an agenda of what I was going to do. I wanted to find out what I, am supposed to do. In other words, there's a training, and I recognize that there are certain priorities that the city of Emeryville, the committee may have, that I'm supposed to take to meetings to represent the city. So I don't come armed with an agenda, but rather want to understand the direction that I should proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Suter. And Ms. Zuniga, can you answer the same question, please?
Yeah, I've actually been thinking about this a lot. And I realize, we're kind of living in this new world, kind of post-COVID. There's new regulations that are coming in kind of at the federal level in terms of how we deal with public transportation, wearing masks and things like that. There's a lot of fear. And, the disabled and the elderly community is at particular risk. So one area where I think there might be an opportunity to kind of, mitigate a little bit of that fear is to look at partnerships. So I think that there is an opportunity with the gig economy and the explosion that we're seeing in terms of some of these drivers to be able to kind of redeploy them and look at how we might be able to create new jobs for some of the workers on the transportation side, some of the folks that are driving buses and things like that. So, is there a way that we can make sure that we're keeping them employed, that there's not going to have to be any kind of cuts? And is there a way that we can capitalize on partnerships and tap into the tech community a little bit more? I think that, there's a new tax from the state of California that would be going into what's happening with, some of those Uber drivers and things like that. So I think there's an opportunity to optimize that fund and look at how we can kind of partner on our end. Obviously, we're a small city, and we have a lot of experience in terms of the Emory go-round shuttle. So I think scaling down public transportation might be an option in terms of how we can kind of optimize and allow individuals to be able to get to their appointments, to not have that fear of having to be on a bus and be worried about things. I mean, right now we're looking at how do we distribute vaccines. And I think public transportation has an opportunity to help there, but we need to be able to give people the tools to feel safe and to feel secure. So that's just one area that I've kind of had on my mind. because I think that one big thing is just, how do we make sure that people stay healthy, and how do we make sure that the disabled are getting to their appointments and feel empowered to be able to stay active.
Thank you, Ms. Zuniga. Member Medina, did you have any additional questions for the applicants? Okay, you're muted, but I see you're saying no. So I will move to Member Bowders, who I believe has additional questions.
Do others have questions?
I'm getting no's.
Let me maybe ask a different question. Can I ask each person what they think the nature and the role of the position is?
And let's begin with Mr. Suter again, please.
Okay, the understanding I had of the role was to represent the city in the various meetings to promote our position in the various, let's say, discussions and considerations for budgetary commitments, etc. I sat in recently at a BPAC meeting and realized that ACTC is a prime source to get basically any kind of project, let's say, funded. And so I realize it's an important representation that one of us is going to provide for Emeryville. And so that's what I saw.
All right, Ms. Zuniga, I would like to give you the opportunity to respond.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of cross-functional roles here. So obviously, mapping out transportation, being able to deal with some of the issues, in particular looking at kind of the disability side and the elderly side, is kind of what I thought would be a little bit more of the focused role. Obviously, part of what you're doing is also working with the broader Alameda County to bring the issues of Emory at the forefront and make sure that we're included in the decisions that are happening at the more Alameda County level. In addition to that, obviously looking at what's happening at the local level and making sure that we're working to provide the citizens with everything that they need to stay mobile. And also looking at how we can kind of expand our own footprint through transportation and serve as, I think that transportation in and of itself, right, attracts new residents, attracts businesses. And I think having that lens of where you can plug in and help out across the board is, inherent to the role in any kind of capacity.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional clarifying questions from council for the applicants? And if not, I will check in with the city clerk to see if any members of the public have submitted public comment for the appointment EDAC, or if anyone has raised their hand via the Zoom application or through their telephone number.
I did just receive a comment card, but I don't believe it's for this item, so not at this time.
Okay, and I am checking the attendees list and I don't see any hands raised either. So I will bring it back to my comments to my colleagues for deliberation. And if someone could go ahead and mute Ms. Zuniga and Mr. Suter. I appreciate you both applying and coming before the council for appointment to this very important body. And I just want to begin the conversation on this item by stating that as long as I've been on the liaison to the Commission on Aging, that a member of Commission on Aging has held this position for PAPCO. And it's been helpful to have that person reporting back to the COA and to get input from all of the seniors and other folks who serve on that committee as regards to spending on our these local programs like 8 to Go and someone who has knowledge and of the Emory Go Round as well. So I'm inclined, while I appreciate both applicants, I'm inclined to approve Mr. Suter tonight, but I want to certainly check in with my colleagues. Mr. Bowders.
Thanks. I have a question and then potentially a recommendation of my own. Staff, when we reached out, I know we send this out to the Commission on Aging. Do we reach out, outreach to other members of the community who are affiliated with disability organizations? So folks who may be receiving assistance through Meals on Wheels, people who are users in Emeryville of 8 to Go or paratransit. Do we do specified or targeted outreach for this position to those groups?
I'm going to unmute Lorraine so she can talk about, my first answer is I don't believe we go to that extent for notifying, but Lorraine will be able to clarify that for us.
Hello.
Hi, Lorraine.
So what we do typically is we distribute the notice out to our committee secretaries and ask them if they could forward it not only to their specific committee members, but any other outreach organizations or people that they think that may be interested.
So Madam Mayor, my suggestion is I would like to ask that we instead give staff direction to renotice this and to keep the applications for the 2 people who came tonight. As the representative to ACTC, PAPCO is generally represented, and it's not, I understand it's not always the case. It's seniors or people who are living with a disability. I don't know that the applicants answered the questions and gave statements that would make me comfortable selecting either of them tonight. So out of respect to them and the process, I would like to ask that we maybe republish this, but if others disagree, I understand.
I'm supportive of that. I think especially while we're seeing cuts to public transportation agencies, making decisions and trade-offs that impact the most vulnerable members of our society who most rely on public transportation is an increasingly important role. And I agree with Councilmember Bowders that I didn't see perhaps the level of consideration there at this current moment that I think is necessary. Now, I'd be happy to speak with either of these applicants offline and have a more in-depth conversation with them prior to the next meeting so I can get a better sense of their priorities and understanding of paratransit issues. Ms. Niga, I'm incredibly sympathetic. I grew up with a severely disabled sibling, so I understand how that impacts your day-to-day life and shapes how you get around. And I think you probably have a deeper sense of the issues than maybe was projected this evening. So I'd like to, yes, renotice it, broaden the pool, maybe take a moment to have some more in-depth conversations and just make sure that who we send to this agency at this critical juncture is going to be able to represent that vulnerable population in the correct way.
All right, do I have any additional thoughts from Member Pats or Member Donahue? Oh, you're on mute, Scott.
Between Celeste Burrow's recommendation and what you have said, Diane, I'm prepared to support John Suter.
Member Pats, do you have any? Would you like to weigh in?
Yes, I think that I really hear what Member Bowders and Member Medina are saying. I think that I always like to see a larger pool and people represented who are most likely to take advantage of a particular service. I think that's really a critical piece. That said, I'll echo what Member Donahue and you have said. Celeste is somebody I know well and trust her recommendation and appreciate the fact that Mr. Suter is on the Commission for Aging as avenues that we could support. But I think as long as we're not saying let's take these 2 applicants out of the pool, but let's just dig the pool a little deeper, then I can support that.
Okay.
Let's have to walk the nice middle road.
I think that's fine. Do we need to make a motion to continue this to the next meeting?
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be the next meeting if you want to do another recruitment period.
I see.
So our typical recruitment period extends for 45 days. And I would also appreciate if council members have ideas of places that we would want to make sure our notice was seen. I would appreciate hearing about those.
Very good. And I want to thank both Ms. Zuniga and Mr. Suter for applying. And we will keep your applications in rotation for when we do finally do select a member. I would give the advice to anyone applying to please attend as an attendee the next PAPCO meeting, so you have an appreciation for the specific issues that they're dealing with, and we will look forward to seeing you when we do this appointment in a few meetings from now.
Mayor Martinez, I don't know if you've noticed, but Mr. Suter has raised his hand. I don't know if we have time to consider another comment from him.
Sure. Let's give him 1 minute.
Okay.
John, go ahead.
You're muted.
Mr. Suter, you need to unmute yourself if you can do that.
Well, maybe he raised his hand and walked away. But
well, we're going to continue with the next action. So
and we're still on the same item. So we, as staff, can you tell me if Ms. Walraven has joined us?
She has not, and I checked with staff, and we notified and invited her and did not receive a confirmation back that she would attend.
Very good. And I will come back to my colleagues for clarifying questions to Mr. Garut. And Member Pats, if you have anything, I believe you're the liaison to EDAC at this time.
Member Donahue is the liaison. I was the former liaison.
My apologies.
But I fully support Jean-Philippe, so I'll throw that in there and you don't have to come back to me.
Very good. Mr. Vice Mayor, do you have any questions that you'd like to have posed to our applicant?
Well, I know that there must be more than 50 employees at Decathlon. How many employees are there currently?
Sherry, could you unmute Jean-Philippe, please?
Yes, actually, we do have 46 employees right now working at the Emeryville location.
Okay.
And 120 in the Bay because we do have our warehouse located in Auckland.
Okay, that's a big business.
It is a big business, correct? Yeah.
Oh,
are there any other questions from council?
When we get to it, I just see Ms. Walraven has joined.
Oh, very good. Okay. Thank you, Jean-Philippe. I will, Ms. Walraven, if you don't mind, if you could raise your hand, we'd love to give you the opportunity for 2 minutes to introduce yourself to the council and tell us why you'd like to be appointed to this committee.
Sure. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay. So I work with Wareham Property Group. I have been working in Emeryville for 10 plus years. I think I'm on year 11 or so. And I personally am very engaged with not only working, but I'm in the city, all the time. And very interested in trying to help promote and elevate the city of Emeryville's goals and objectives wherever I can support those.
Very good. And I will take it back to my colleagues and see if they have any clarifying questions for Ms. Walraven. Okay, thank you, Kirsten. So I'll ask the clerk at this time if there are any comments submitted for the EDAC application.
No, there are none at this time.
Okay, and I see John Suter's hand raised, but I don't think it's for EDAC. So I'm going to bring it back to my colleagues for discussion. And you could go ahead and mute Ms. Walraven at this time. Does anyone want to kick it off? Scott, as you are the liaison to this committee.
Wareham has been represented in the past quite a bit on many of our committees, and they have really done good work for us as a city. But decathlon is new to our city, and I think we should get some fresh perspectives.
Great.
And that's my opinion.
Is that a motion?
That is.
Second the motion.
Okay. Any more discussion from my colleagues? Nope. Member Medina, please.
I just want to echo what Scott says. We've got two strong applicants here, really feeling good to have you both. But I do think it's great to have some fresh faces in, and we know that Ms. Walraven, you've already served on the Emeryville committee and really appreciate that service. I do think that having somebody from a retail business represented is really crucial as we are going into this retail apocalypse. And so really grateful for the application, and we'll be supporting.
Very good. If I see no further discussion, we'll go ahead and I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Pats?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue?
Aye.
And Mayor Martinez?
Aye. Thank you. And before I close this item, I actually just wanted to see if Mr. Suter did want to speak. Please raise your hand right now. I'm looking at your name on the attendees list, and your hand is currently down. Oh, there he goes.
Okay, let's see if it works this time.
Great. We'll give you that 1 minute, Mr. Suter.
Okay, I just had a question. I noticed that there's going to be a PAPCO meeting on the 22nd, and it will be okay for me to attend that, right? Or is it not so?
I'm just advising that anyone who's applying for this committee should attend as a member of the public, not as a representative of our city.
Okay, understood.
To be really clear, there is no appointee from Emeryville, so please only identify yourself as a member of the public and not as the representative of the city. Thank you.
I understand that, and thank you for reminding me.
All right, thank you. And I will go ahead and close this item now, which will bring us to item 12.2. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Emeryville amending the Emeryville Municipal Code regarding cannabis. So is there a staff presentation on this item? And Member Medina, I'll recognize you before we go ahead.
Thank you. Before we get started with this one, I've got to recuse myself based on a potential source of income conflict. For the record, this conflict arose after I initially requested this item. So sorry, colleagues, to bring this up and make you deal with it, but I must. So I'm going to leave the Zoom meeting entirely, and you text me when it's time for me to return.
We will text you when we finish with this item.
Send me an emoji of some kind. Thank you.
Okay, skedaddle. All right, very good. So I see Mr. Smalley has joined us. Will you be giving this presentation?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. This is Chad Smalley, the Economic Development and Housing Manager. I'm here to discuss with you a proposed amendment to our cannabis business ordinance. Next slide, please, Sherry. So this is a brief presentation, but brief background is back in April of 2017, the City Council adopted the ordinances that we call the cannabis ordinances that allow for cannabis businesses to locate in the city. 17-002 was the amendment to the planning regulations, which allowed cannabis uses in certain zone districts with a conditional use permit. 17-003 established a separate annual permit process that we call an operator's permit, which is administered by the police department. Cannabis businesses need both of these in order to operate. The use permit runs with the land and is a one-time permit, and the operator's permit attaches to the business, not the land, and is something that's done annually. On November 6th of 2018, the voters of Emeryville approved Measure S, which established a cannabis business tax. Next slide, please. We had amended some of these ordinances over time. In March of 2019, we removed the requirement that cannabis businesses not have operations that can be seen from public rights of way. Then in April of 2020, we did another amendment which conformed the regulations to state law and dealt with various matters, including delivery hours. Then in September of last year, we amended the planning regulations to allow cannabis business uses in additional zone districts, as well as reduce the retail buffers from parks and other sensitive uses. In October of last year, the City Council requested an item addressing operator permits that are issued to businesses that don't ever commence operations. Next slide, please. So staff, further background on this, ever since those ordinances were adopted by the City Council, there's been extraordinarily strong interest from the cannabis industry in locating here. We have, through Measure S, we have very competitive tax rates in comparison with our neighbors. Emeryville's central location means they have access to a really robust market. And there's the general sense that the City Council and its policies are supportive of the industry overall. And that word has gotten out. And there is not a week that goes by that I don't get a call from a cannabis business interested in locating in Emeryville. But the story is always the same in those conversations. There is not much land or space available for cannabis businesses. And the reason for that is that in the first place, we're a small city with limited inventory, relatively speaking. And there's really strong demand from other industry sectors as well, further shrinking that pool of spaces. And then finally, there are many property owners that are unwilling to transact with cannabis businesses. And when you get through that funnel, there are not many places available for the cannabis businesses. Next slide, please. And this is unfortunate because there's a lot of revenue potential with these cannabis businesses. You all know that we've had extraordinary impacts to our main revenue sources of sales tax, transient occupancy tax, and the business tax, which have declined between 15 and 85%, depending on which source you're looking at, between fiscal 19 and 21, largely due to the pandemic. Interestingly, if we look at same store, meaning businesses that were open in both quarters, if you compare third quarter of 2019 to 2020, cannabis businesses that had revenues increased by 39% over that time period. And so these are all growing, and even despite the pandemic. So cannabis represents an opportunity to diversify the city's revenue sources, and there's strong interest from the cannabis industry. So the city has an interest in ensuring that these limited areas that get approved for cannabis uses through the conditional use permit process are actually put into productive use and have businesses being transacted in them. Next slide, please. So the existing ordinance at 5-2808 sub B establishes that, and this is the operator's permit section of the cannabis ordinance, establishes that there is no entitlement or vested right to an operator's permit. There's a section 5-2806 sub D where grounds for denial of a renewal application or revocation of a permit are set forth. And the ordinance that we have drafted in consultation with the city attorney's office adds a grounds for denial of a renewal. It says that if there is no business activity conducted in the 3 months prior to the renewal date, that's a new grounds for renewal or for denial of that renewal application. And that determination is made by the police chief, because that entire section of the ordinance is administered by the police department. The non-renewal decision, if that's what a business encounters, is appealable to a hearing officer. So they have avenues of appeal available to them if that happens. And so it's very straightforward. It just adds that one section, and it provides an additional means for the city to ensure that places are being continuing to be used for business. Next slide, please. So our recommendation is to adopt this ordinance, which adds that additional grounds for non-renewal. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Instead of going for clarifying questions first, if council will allow me, I'd like to check with the clerk to see if there's any public comments submitted for this item.
There are none and no raised hands.
Okay, and I will just remind members of the public that, and I'll give you a second to do so. If you're joining by Zoom, you may use the raise hand feature to be acknowledged, or if you're joining by phone, you can hit *9 to raise your hand that way. And I don't see any comments, so I'm going to close the public comment section of this item and bring it back to my colleagues. I'd like to begin with Member Bowders, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a series of questions about the implementation of this new proposal, and I just wanted to ask my questions, Madam Mayor, but I wanted to see if my colleagues, in light of them, thought perhaps that rather than take action on this item tonight, perhaps because we, you know, as Council Member Medina mentioned, prior to being in a state of recusal, she had requested this, and I believe had talked to some staff about this, and so the rest of us maybe haven't had a study session or an opportunity to really go over a couple of the nuances in this, and I've identified several things that I think might need to be addressed. So if you're okay with it, Madam Mayor, I just want to point out those 3 things and then just see what staff's response to them are, and then maybe the council can, you know, we can continue discussion, but I'm not prepared to vote for this tonight. I just want to flag that early on. So the first thing is in the language of the draft itself. So if you go to section 2 of this proposed amendment on page 2, it's titled Amending Emeryville Municipal Code Section 5-28.06D. There's a couple, I think, grammatical errors. There's a couple commas in the first line to begin with that I'm not sure why they're there. But beyond that, it says in here, like if you just read it, the cannabis business is not engaged in any lawful sale of cannabis or cannabis product at the permitted location of the cannabis business in the 3-month period immediately prior to the conclusion of the permit term. Here's the loopholes I see with that. Any lawful sale of cannabis means that a store in theory could open for 1 day and sell to 1 employee with 1 receipt, 1 product. And that would pull them out of the scope of ever being revoked in a year. So they could essentially do no business all year and choose to transact in the physical location, and it would qualify under this ordinance as having been sufficient. So I think that the use of any here is problematic, and I think we should remove that provision. I'm happy to hear from others, but I don't think there should be the threshold should be any. I think it should be narrowed. And then the requirement that it be limited to the 3-month look back essentially actually is the worst case. We're setting up the worst scenario for ourselves in terms of a revenue generator, because we're basically saying we issue a permit and we lose all the value of the money that could be earned for the first 9 months potentially, and all the interest and things the city could gain from collecting receipts during those periods. We lose all of that because I believe we collect cannabis receipts twice a year. So we would potentially not get anything at the first half of the year at a mid-cycle review, for example, where we have to make really serious budget decisions. And instead we're leaving this decision till the last 3 months. And I think it should be at any point during the year. I think that maybe a better way of putting this is that if there is a period of time, like we could say, for example, if a cannabis business is not operable and collecting receipts, and reach it for 21 days or 28 days or 30 days during a calendar year, upon the triggering of that event, the permit is subject to revocation, which then doesn't put us in these time periods and instead says, if you close business for some period of time, you could be closed. This is still discretionary. It doesn't require the city to do it. So if we closed for COVID, for example, it wouldn't necessitate that we do it. All it would do is put it in the ambit of the reviewing person on staff to review it and to decide whether or not it merits that. And that gets to my third point, which isn't on the statute, but is on the ordinance, but is in our statute. As Chad outlined, this entire subsection D is about, I'm sorry, the 28.06 is all about the cannabis and the issuance and permit and revocation, and it all goes to the police chief. And I'm not proposing we undo the permitting process. I think that's in line with the state and other jurisdictions. But we actually have kind of created a little weird thing, because we've put in our statute in one section, I'll give you the exact subparagraph, but in subparagraph D, in the opening part of subparagraph D, is we have grounds for denial, revocation, or suspension. And this is akin to like the housing authority world. There's a very different process for denying something than there is for revoking or suspending something. One is a right that hasn't been granted, right? You're denying it, and the person has the appeal process as to why they were denied and that they met the criteria. And the other is to revoke it because of you actually earned it and you met the criteria, but then you engaged in some conduct that changed your status. And the rights of people, actually under law, like you could argue property right, that a person is vested into a right when they have achieved a permit. And so we have to give them a different set of processes, and we have merged them into one subparagraph here, and we have given all of that back to the police chief. And because revocation under this proposed little piece here about non-operation is really economically driven, I think it would be better vested in the city manager. I think there are a couple other provisions in this subsection D. If you look at right above where we're putting this under subsection D, let's see, 6 is failure to pay fees and taxes. The police chief wouldn't inherently know whether that's happened, because fees and taxes, there's only one person in the city who's actually allowed to review our taxes. That's the finance director. So that wouldn't be something the police chief would even know unless it was reported to him. So I actually think that maybe the better thing to do is to give some guidance to staff tonight, and if others support what I'm saying, and perhaps create a space where the city manager, there's a handful of things that the city manager has revocation authority over, and that we instead revise this to not be this any receipt in the last 3 months, but instead select some or give guidance about some period of days, where if you go a certain number of days during the year without collecting receipts, that it triggers the review. So those are my comments, and I'm happy if staff have response to any of them. They were mostly just comments, my observations, and why I'm not ready to support this tonight.
Okay, understood. I saw Vice Mayor Donahue had his hand raised.
How many businesses, Chad, could be affected by, how many locations have permits that aren't taking action right now?
Only one to my knowledge.
And their space is rented, or it's available, or it's, what's the status of the space?
It is rented, and the company has secured a conditional use permit and an operator's permit, and hit some difficulties during construction, and it's my understanding that they're restarting construction on Monday.
Okay. Thank you.
That's what I've got.
Okay, do we have any more discussion?
I had a couple of changes that seem so minor now that I don't want to mention them. But I did catch the double comma. But I have to say, with the changes I was going to recommend, I would have supported doing this evening. But with looking at some of the things that Member Bowders has suggested, I really do think putting this off and coming back with either those edits made or even a study session to further go into depth, depending on what staff needs from us, would be my suggestion.
Very good. I too would like to see this come back and start exploring those different solutions to the problems that were aptly recognized in this draft. I would like to give staff the opportunity to see if there are any best practices to be followed from other cities, because I know we are not in isolation with the problem of having someone holding a permit and not acting on it for various reasons. So this is happening in other jurisdictions as well. So I would like to see this come back and for us to carefully consider what those windows are, that we should make sure that we're able to optimize the city receiving taxes from these businesses. I'd also like to take this opportunity to see if my colleagues are interested in a future study session or item where we can consider, just on a broader case, opportunities to help get more cannabis businesses into the city, including, the opportunities to expand operators permits and kind of go beyond the limit that we gave ourselves of just 2. So this is something I would like to discuss in the future. I can bring this up again under future agenda items. And I just, as we were discussing this tonight, I wanted to bring that up. But if folks are comfortable with the direction suggested by Member Bowders, I think we should bring this item back at a future date. Yep, I'm seeing thumbs up. All right. So let's go ahead and close this item. And I apologize, I lost my agenda. Bear with me one moment.
And we also text.
Yes.
I've texted Councilmember Medina.
Thank you.
You said you could send her an emoji, and we'll go ahead and give her a moment to get online before we move to the next item. I'll just announce the title while we're waiting for her. The next item is item 12.3. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Emeryville amending Chapter 13, dockless shared mobility systems, to Title 4 of the Emeryville Municipal Code to establish regulations and new permits to operate dockless shared mobility systems in the public right-of-way. And I see Nancy has joined us.
Mm-hmm. So you want me to wait for Allie?
Yeah, let's give her just a few seconds to hop on to make sure that she is receiving the report as well. And is there a PowerPoint going along with this, Nancy?
There is. Sherry, do you have that?
I do. I was going to wait so I could watch the screen in case I need to let her in.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just
here she is. I just promoted her. She should be joining us any moment now.
She's back. All right, take it away, Nancy.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. It's Nancy Humphrey, Environmental Program Supervisor in Public Works, and I'm here to talk about proposed amendments to the Dockless Shared Mobility Ordinance. The ordinance was passed in April 2019. It's number 19005. It covers devices as opposed to vehicles. It includes requirements for the device specifications. It requires provision of data using the standard, the new standard specification for data provision. It requires that a discount membership plan must be offered and that the service must serve the entire city. This last point, limits parking to furnishing zone of sidewalk or curbside, is one of the items we are looking to amend. Next slide, please. So this, Sherry? So yeah, you guys passed this ordinance in 2019, but we didn't issue permits. The program was never implemented due to an interest in the outcome of litigation in neighboring cities. The litigation was settled, And in Oakland, the only related change in their ordinance is related to operators' response time for complaints. The amendment proposes that change and two others related to the current state of this field, which I'll get into those in a minute. If these amendments pass, the plan is to open the permit in March or April once this takes effect and we iron out any issues with the actual permit language. All right, next, please. So the changes in this amendment, there are three changes. One is requiring devices to have a locking mechanism integrated into or on the device that holds the device upright when parked at a bike rack or other fixed object. The second change is standardizing the complaint response time to 3 hours at all times. It was 3 hours in business hours and 6 hours on non-business hours. And I'm also planning future changes in the permit fee and the renewal permit application fee to reflect the matured state of this industry since 2019. We don't think we're going to get inundated by Johnny-come-latelys and people dumping hundreds of scooters, and we don't think it will take as much time to manage as it would have a couple of years ago. So that master fee schedule change will come in March if this project moves forward. So that's what I've got for initial information. And I wonder, are there questions?
Great. Are there any clarifying questions for staff? No, I don't see any. So I'll ask the clerk if anyone has submitted a public comment electronically.
Yes, they have. And I've also, I'm seeing a couple of raised hands. Now this electronic card, I see the person is also on the line with their hand raised. So I'm going to assume that Bob Walsh wants to make his comment personally. So I am allowing him to talk.
Mr. Walsh, you'll have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Bob Walsh, and I do represent Bird. Hopefully I won't take 3 minutes. I just wanted to offer our gratitude and congratulations to Nancy and to all the leaders of Emeryville for this careful process. Shared electric scooters are affordable, they're equitable, enjoyable, and during the COVID-19 crisis, they offer a socially distanced way to take medium and short-range trips throughout Emeryville. I just wanted to say that we fully support the proposed amendments to require that scooters be equipped with the integrated locking mechanism and that there be a standardized time frame in which operators must address complaints. I do, I have voiced some question about the locking mechanism. There can be some issues around that, basically having to do with a little bit of friction there where people may not ride them as much if they have to unlock them. And then also some questions about, whether the bike racks are spread out equally throughout the city so that we can have an equal distribution of the scooters. But just beyond that, I mean, I just wanted to raise that. One thought might be is to require the locking mechanisms to be employed, say 6 months afterwards, so that you have an idea to see sort of how the whole program is used and where you might want to install racks and all that kind of stuff, just to gather some data. But that's it. And that's it for me. And really, I'm just available to the council should you wish to ask me any questions. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I believe I see Alex April.
Yes, allowing Alex. Okay, Alex, unmute and go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, honorable council mayors and mayor. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Alex April, and I'm a senior government manager at Spin Scooters. Just a really quick background on us. I should also not be able to take 3 minutes, but Spin is an independent subsidiary of Ford Motor Company. And with this, we're able to really invest long-term in the communities in which we operate. Specifically, and this will be the case in Emeryville if we have the opportunity to operate, is that all of our employees will be in in-house W-2, meaning they have full benefits, wages, and we will be able to be quick to respond to any improperly parked vehicles. Also here just to express gratitude, Nancy, for all of your work, and all of the leaders in Emeryville who are able to get this draft. SPIN is fully supportive of this. We're thankful that the Lock 2 is added. I know this is a concern that we had previously, just for consistency's sake across the jurisdictions in the Bay that also are using Lock 2. And also appreciate, I noticed on the affordability portion of the draft, the $5 for free rides, and want to let you know that SPIN will be offering free 30-minute rides to all low-income users in compliance with the STAP, PG&E, like other jurisdictions in which we operate around the Bay Area. So also, yeah, just feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions, but we look forward to working with you, and thanks for taking the time.
Very good, thank you. And I will bring it back to council for discussion. Does anyone have any comments? And if not, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
I'm responding to the point about we don't know potentially where these are going to need to be left. Meaning, I haven't been on the bike ped committee now for years. This is a question for Ali. Do we have sufficient bike locking stations where they're needed around the city for normal bikes? Or can you perceive a disjunction between what we have, and is the comment about waiting 6 months maybe a wise idea to better understand what we need?
Madam Mayor, if I may respond. You know, I think that's a fair point. Of course, I could always see more bike locking stations in the city, but I have not perceived that to be a significant issue, nor has the Bike Pedestrian Committee raised this as an issue, which you know they're not shy about doing, unless they changed drastically in the last 3 years, and it's just what you left me with. It hasn't come up on their really long list. I think we counted 48 motions in the past year. So far, nothing from them about it. But I could see maybe if we're noticing a need, then we can address that need maybe at 6 months and put them into critical places, would be my kind of read of how to implement this.
Okay, thank you.
Member Bowders?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had two items. One in response to the public comment that Vice Mayor Donahue just spoke to. You know, I support in the long term looking at the opportunity to put corrals in place. I know we've talked about this at Transportation Committee, and I think places where these scooters are going to go in a higher frequent number, that's a good option for us in the future. You know, I also understand, you know, wanting to say, well, let's just collect the data and not require the lock requirement for the interim time being. And, you know, I've thought a lot about the balance of that. And, you know, we held off on issuing permits because of ADA lawsuits. And one of my concerns is that even if the company that gets permits from the city is benevolent and responds, you know, quickly, it doesn't, not having a lock 2 requirement in a city with narrow sidewalks could result in people with disabilities or family members with disabilities not being able to access our community properly. So I do support us spending, I think to Councilmember Medina's point, we can take 6 months and kind of look at the data. And I understand some of these companies collect some excellent data. We can look to see where there are hubs of activity for where people are locking, you know, and I think it's also good to see the mindset. If people need to actually station or lock a scooter as opposed to drop it on a sidewalk, we can kind of get a better sense of like, what is the closest thing that they go to, right? I mean, to me, it actually like gives us additional data. If we let them drop it in the middle of the sidewalk, I don't know what store they went to or did they get on a bus there, but if they actually lock it to something close to where their end, you know, trip is, I think it gives us a little bit better data for determining the long-term goal, which is corrals. So I just want to say, I share the staff's approach to this with an interest in collecting the information as we go and revisiting this, as Councilmember Medina has already suggested. I do want to propose one, well, it's two pieces of the same part, but small amendment to the language. And in reviewing on page 5 of the draft ordinance, in section 4-13.04 subparagraph B, I'll give you all a second to look at that. I just want to propose adding 2 words basically. One is a subsection, but it's a 1-word subsection. Maybe it's a 2-word subsection. But so here's my suggestion. This paragraph that says, unless otherwise specified, dockless shared mobility devices must be locked upright to a bike rack or other fixed object as long as the device does not impede access to or use of the right of way. That's the sidewalk or the street, right? Devices shall not be parked in the furnishing zones adjacent to or within. And then we've identified these places where they can't be parked. There's 2 things I'd like to see added to this list that I don't see. On section 7, this came up at committee many times, but because it's not in the examples given, I'm just asking that we actually put stairway handrails or handrails on that, because a lot of people who have mobility issues, who are trying to perhaps go up the staircase to their apartment building, if the bottom of the staircase there is a locked scooter to it, that could limit a person with a cane or a walker from accessing the bottom of the handrail, and then they have to balance themselves getting up the first few steps. And so I think handrail should be just actually called out in this. And the second is I would actually add a number 10, and I would actually put trees. And that's going to seem maybe crazy, but if we have sidewalks where the sidewalk actually jogs around the trees, and if people were to lock them to trees, especially new trees, people pulling who don't maybe know it's locked or whatever, pulling could uproot trees, break trees, damage the bark on trees, which make them susceptible to insects and other things. So I actually don't want to see them attached to trees either. Those are the 2 things I would like to propose as amendments. I'm open to thoughts on that. Otherwise, I support the ordinance and staff, and I want to thank the staff for their time and work on this and all their patience with the litigation.
Thank you.
Yes, I'll give staff the opportunity to respond. Madam City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Bowders, with regard to the tree, I have another suggestion for consideration about where the prohibition would go. Just trying to think about how to make it. So in subsection B, must be locked upright to a bike rack or other fixed object, comma, which shall not include trees, comma.
I'm okay with that. If that's the staff's preferred way of capturing that, I'm fine with that.
Just a suggestion to make it a clear prohibition.
I will be very clear that I appreciate staff finding a clearer way to say that. I think locking these 2 trees is, to me, actually not an advisable thing. So if that's your preferred way, I am happy to bake it however you want to put it in. So.
All right. Is there any objection to those minor amendments to the ordinance? I don't see any. If there's no further discussion, I'll enter. Nope. Member Pats?
I cut you off too early. I was going to make a motion with those 2 amendments. And I just want to clarify that we're going to add the word tree after fixed object, the phrase not including trees after fixed objects. And then we're going to add item 10, which is any stairways or rails.
Member Pats, just to clarify, I was offering to put it in member 7, which actually, because it's not street furniture, does staff object to it being 10 handrails? Okay, then yeah, go ahead. I'm fine.
Yeah, I was looking for symmetry there, and ending a list on 9 is just wrong.
I'll second Member Pats's motion.
Member Donahue, do you have a comment?
There's so many rails that are useful for locking bicycles that are not stair rails. Stair rails really do interfere with people that are slightly disabled using a cane, but a lot of rails are just preventing people from falling over a 18-inch embankment, and a bicycle could help them not fall over. So I say only handrails attached to stairs. Other rails allow bikes and or scooters to attach to.
I hear your friendly amendment, and I'll let Mr. Bowders speak to it as well. But for me, if it's a handrail, whether it's attached to stairs or anything else, it's intended only for hands.
I concur with Member Pats.
Yeah.
I think we might be going down a sticky path there, Scott, because there are rails adjacent to some wheelchair ramps as well. So it could get problematic.
Yeah.
Bridges have rails on them. They have handrails on bridges, and those are not stair rails necessarily. So we have a brand new bridge that will have rails on it to help people walk across the bridge.
Yeah. I think what you're getting at, Scott, is barriers. And again, I would argue that if the barrier is there to keep people from falling, it's in the right of way. So it's covered by something else in this ordinance. But for me, any stair rail or handrail, and again, guardrails, I feel would put it in the right of way, but I could be wrong on that because there's a myriad of guardrails out there. Does that provide? I'm sorry, what?
No, I think Member Medina had her hand raised.
Yeah, prior to the rail paradox, I was simply going to liaise from BPAC. This came up. They're very enthusiastic. They can't wait to have more multimodal options, and specifically are hoping, in addition to scooters, to get some electric bikes in Emeryville, was a major hope among our BPAC members. So liaising that they are supportive of this.
Very good. And I apologize, Member Pats, did you want to close your comments?
No, I just want to, I've never rejected a friendly amendment before, and so I want to make sure that I did it correctly and was friendly all at the same time.
I can make a friendly amendment to put a smiley emoji in the ordinance, but I'll withhold.
All right, I think that we've included all of our comments on this issue, so we will go ahead and look for a vote, Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember, we've got our city attorney raising his hand.
Probably need to read by title only.
Thank you.
If it won't prejudice Member Pats, I'll make a motion to read this by title only.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Please call the roll on the motion to read by title, and I apologize for steering us off course.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Pats?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue?
Aye.
And Mayor Martinez.
Aye, and take it away, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Emeryville amending Chapter 13, Douglas Shared Mobility Systems, to Title 4 of the Emeryville Municipal Code to establish regulations and new permits to Douglas Shared Mobility Systems in the public right-of-way with a CEQA determination of exempt pursuant to State CEQA Guidelines 15061 sub B3, 15378A, B, sub A, and sub B3.
Very good. And I believe we have a motion from Member Pats, and was the second from Member Bouders?
Yes.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Pats?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue?
Aye.
And Mayor Martinez.
Aye. And that passes unanimously, bringing us to our next item, which is department head reports. And is Charlie with us? I believe
he is.
Very good. Our planning director will give us a report on recent planning commission actions.
Mayor Martinez and members of the City Council, this is my monthly report to you on actions by the Planning Commission. Their last meeting was last Thursday on January 28th. There were 3 items on that agenda as listed on your agenda. I would note that we currently have 2 vacancies on the Planning Commission due to the resignations of Commissioners Guerrero and Sohani, both of whom have left Emeryville, unfortunately. So all 5 of the current planning commissioners were in attendance at this meeting. The first item was Elevation 22 tree removal permit. This was a permit to remove 3 street trees on Doyle Street and 1 street tree in the Greenway. And that was approved unanimously on a 5-0 vote. The second item was the Emery Go Round temporary use permit for them to park their buses at the so-called Rifkin lot on Horton Street. Their current use permit expires on April 15th, 2021, and the application was to extend that for 2.5 months to June 30th of 2021, by which time their new bus yard that they're building on Mandela Parkway in West Oakland should be ready for them to use. And the commission approved that extension also on a 5-0 unanimous vote. The third item was the conversion of a garage into 2 bedrooms at an existing house on 47th Street. And the reason that was before the commission is that a garage does not count as floor area, whereas a bedroom does count as floor area. So converting a garage into a bedroom and into 2 bedrooms, in this case, pushed the floor area ratio above the base level into the bonus area, which is why the Planning Commission had to consider this. And they again approved this unanimously on a 5-0 vote. I would note that all 3 of these decisions are appealable to the City Council within 15 days. In this case, the appeal deadline is next Friday, February 12th. And of course, this is your opportunity to appeal any of these items to yourself if you wish to do so. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for staff or comments on the report or wish to appeal an item? And I am seeing no's all around. So thank you, Charlie.
You're welcome.
And we will all do our best to promote those vacancy applications for this very important committee.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we're just one person away from losing quorum. So,
yeah.
That brings us to number 14, future agenda item requests from council members. Member Bowders.
I have one that may seem technical and unusual, but I actually want to just briefly explain. I'm looking to have a planning regulation amendment, section 9-3.202. I'd like to discuss. There's a table there, which in that table outlines all of the uses, land uses in Emeryville, the zoning areas, and by zone and what's allowed. And under the industrial section of that table, crematories are authorized for use, and this would not have ever been something I think I would have ever thought would be a proposed agenda item for me, but serving as the chair of the Stationary Source Committee at the Air District, I've been briefed a lot in the last few months about state and local regulations related to air quality and changes that are being made, and I was alarmed to learn a number of things about the regulation of crematoriums. And essentially, if we have them authorized as the land use, and I understand by looking at our code, it's a conditional use permit, so it's not just a by right use of them, but they're very bad for residential communities, first of all, the things that come out of them. We had one here a while ago. It hasn't operated, so there are none with a pre-existing non-conforming use under a circumstance where we were to eliminate them. But I actually just want to have the discussion. There's no statute necessarily. It's just listed in a table, and I'm literally looking to talk about whether we want to keep it as a optional use or turn it to an X in the box, which means it's not permitted in the city. I will just note that county health departments and the state have lifted limits on the number of bodies that can be burned due to COVID, and that has created air quality issues, and it is very much linked to negative impacts on human health. And according to our staff at the Air District, they don't really have any ability to deny permitting one of these if we have a land use provision that allows it. So I would like us to have a conversation. It would not require a ton of staff writing or legal work because it's literally just in a table, but I'm hoping we can have a conversation about that very soon.
Okay, can I see thumbs up or down to support this item? Very good, unanimous support to bring that forward. Is there anyone else who has anything that they'd like to see on a future agenda? I will just come back with what I mentioned earlier, that I am interested in having a study session to explore opportunities to bring more cannabis businesses into the city, and frame that as part of our revenue diversification, up to and including the possibility of expanding our opportunities for operators permits. So I'm not in a rush to have that conversation, but I think it's something that we should be talking about because there's certainly interest. So we should explore whether or not we have the capacity in our city to accommodate that interest. So are folks okay with this? All right. Yes?
Madam Mayor, may I ask a clarifying question? This is Charlie.
Yes.
Did you want to separate that from the ordinance that you heard tonight?
Yes. Yes. So this is a completely separate issue.
Okay, so we'll work on that ordinance as a separate thing from this study session.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and in the study session that I'm proposing, I'm hoping that staff will be able to give, I know it's a moving target, but just an overview of where cannabis laws are standing. Senator Chuck Schumer has indicated that some bills are coming forward to deschedule cannabis at the federal level. So I'm curious how that's going to impact the attitude of people who hold land and are landlords in the city, if that's even under consideration. I want to know what is impeding folks from being able to operate their businesses in the city, what the obstacles are, and what council can do to alleviate those obstacles. So with that, unless there are any other comments from my colleagues or staff, we can call this meeting adjourned. It's 8:50 p.m. and we will see you again at on February 16th. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.